says that people who enter bathrooms designated for the, quote, opposite sex could face trespassing charges. There was a digital traffic sign in Orlando displaying an anti-gay hate message. It says, kill all gays. We've been talking about Florida so much that Florida has its own playlist on my channel because so many horrendous things are happening and it's so rapid and it's increasing so much that we have like 4 different things to talk about with regards to Florida today. And so I don't even know what to title this segment. I don't even know what this video is. There's so many different things and we're gonna touch on them all and try to like cram it all into one thing because frankly, otherwise I'm gonna have 4 separate videos about Florida this week on the channel. And I think that it would be a waste of your time to do 4 setups and wrap-ups when we could just string it all together. So join me in not knowing what the hell to do about what's going on in Florida. So this week, as of recording this, DeSantis signed 4 bills into law that basically took down various aspects of trans rights, like just eliminated certain aspects of trans rights. Among them are like a bathroom bill, which the bathroom bill, you know, we've been having this fight on and off for years. Even Kansas, where I live, just recently passed a bathroom bill, which is obviously very disheartening because I live here. It's one thing when it's happening in Florida, that's far away. I don't live there. It feels like, oh, you know, things probably won't get that bad here. But no, Kansas has a veto-proof supermajority, despite the fact that we have a Democratic governor. So that sucks a huge load of dicks. The bathroom bill in Kansas doesn't actually have any clear language describing a crime being committed. It simply says bathrooms and locker rooms and etc. should all be designated based on your assigned sex at birth. However, like I said, there is no clear punishment in the law. It's not like clearly outlined as a crime with a specified amount of time that you're supposed to be punished. Nothing has been outlined in that regard with the details. In comparison, looking at this law in Florida, this one says that people who enter bathrooms designated for the, quote, opposite sex could face trespassing charges. The bill includes some exceptions for situations involving children under 12 and seniors and people with developmental disabilities. So like if you're like a dad who needs to accompany the daughter into the bathroom, like you can accompany your tiny little daughter into the bathroom. Like that's an acceptable thing to do. So it defines a female as a person belonging at birth to the biological sex, which has the specific reproductive role of producing eggs. They've straight up gone producing large gametes. Like that's pretty much what they've done here is produce large gametes. And a male is a person belonging at birth to the biological sex, which has the specific reproductive role of producing sperm. So yeah, I don't know. If you have internal testes but no penis, and like so there's no way for any sperm that you create to exit your body, does your biological sex actually have the specific reproductive role of producing sperm? Like you can produce sperm, but you can't deliver it. I don't know. Super interesting, those intersex exceptions. So yeah, and this has to do with restrooms in the bill passed Wednesday would apply to the use of restrooms at facilities such as public schools, colleges, universities, state and local government buildings, prisons, and jails. A previous version of the bill would have also applied to healthcare facilities and businesses such as restaurants, but those places were taken out of the final version. So in that way, it's actually, this is a less sweeping law than the one in Kansas, because the one in Kansas doesn't make any distinctions. When it says restrooms, it just says restrooms. It doesn't say restrooms within schools. It lists schools separately from the concept of restrooms in general. And it doesn't specify only in public buildings or only in certain places. It says everywhere. But this bill is more actionable. So it is worse, I think, in that sense, that this does actually introduce a crime. Yeah, it does kind of escalate a little bit on previous versions. Like in that, yeah. The law in Kansas is going to be easy to knock down because it's written in such a way that it could apply to like a lot of situations, and that there's not any clear actual, like you didn't actually create a law but because you didn't create a punishment or anything. Like you kind of didn't really do anything that wasn't simply symbolic, which obviously is pretty cringe. But that's not the only thing that passed this week. I was trying to look at like articles that were just talking about the gender affirming care ban, but all of them are also including that he put up forward the legislation banning gender-affirming medical care for trans youths. So as much as they had already made it impossible for trans youths, like we've done videos about it, check the playlist, it's been ongoing for a while. They had already declared gender-affirming care for youth is not legitimate medical care. They had some grandfather clauses in there though, I think, saying like, if you're already on the care, we're not gonna take you off of it. But if you now have legislation banning gender-affirming medical care, then you have to take the kids off of it. Like, I don't think that in this one they have a grandfather exception. So they also expanded a controversial state education law, limiting classroom instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity. So that was the Don't Say Gay bill that we talked about such a long time ago. Don't Say Gay has been expanded to 8th grade. Before it was like 3rd grade, and now I think they expanded it to 8th grade, or maybe they've expanded it all the way up through the entirety of high school as well. And then, yeah, they passed another bill restricting drag performances. So one of the things that I don't know if I managed to get an article together for was that in this bill that banned gender-affirming medical care for trans youths, they also made it to where if you're a nurse practitioner, you can't issue hormones. So Planned Parenthoods are not providing gender-affirming care in Florida anymore because most of the people who dispense hormone prescriptions are nurse practitioners. Okay, so there are numerous new restrictions for adults, healthcare restrictions on adults. Now, keep in mind also that they already made it so that if you're on Medicaid does not cover gender-affirming care anymore. They did that last year. So if you're a poor adult in Florida, you cannot get gender-affirming care unless you pay out of pocket. Like, your insurance doesn't cover it. And so this also is saying the informed consent process now requires patients 18 and over seeking gender-affirming care to see a physician in person. So you cannot do telehealth, which is fucking stupid. And you have to see a physician in person, which is the specification. You cannot see a nurse practitioner anymore. So you cannot, there's a carve out for prescription renewals, but providers and experts have different interpretations over whether existing patients can receive refills without going through the new informed consent process. And that ambiguity is prompting providers to stop gender-affirming care altogether. Planned Parenthood South, East, and North Florida has more than 2,000 patients who were seeing nurse practitioners for gender-affirming care. The network of clinics sent a message to patients on Wednesday saying that it will be pausing gender-affirming care services to adapt to the new law and resume care in mid-June. Folks who may have been like needing a refill appointment, like they might just be like screwed for the next month and not have access to their hormones, which can screw with people's mental health and like mess up their lives temporarily. You know, imagine if you just like suddenly didn't have testosterone or suddenly didn't have estrogen in your body. Like, can you imagine like your body would go haywire? It would not be a fun time. Like your sleep, your appetite, all kinds of shit is affected by that. And this is going to be affecting Florida economically. I've talked about this a little bit previously, but people are turning down jobs and moving out of Florida. Like, there are people dropping out of their doctorate programs at the University of South Florida. The ban on government spending means she no longer will be able to receive subsidized care through the University Health Center. Off-campus options are limited because of the other restrictions. These anti-trans policies factored into this decision. Bathroom ban is going to make it unsafe for her to use the restroom on campus. She was also concerned that DeSantis' higher education overhaul would make it more difficult to pursue her research interests in queer and feminist theory. Because DeSantis, like, this is not even something that we bother to cover on this channel because there's so much anti-trans shit coming out of Florida. But they are also invading the campus and invading the classroom and saying you are not allowed to cover certain issues anymore. And, like, you are not allowed to fund diversity programs. So, like, if you teach certain things within a classroom that are too close to what you might call a diversity program, like that class could get canceled, which means that college campuses are going to have to like change and adapt and stop talking about certain things. These people don't even care that it hurts them economically. Economic self-destruction is a hallmark of conservative governments. Yeah, but it's so hard to like here's the argument that I made earlier when I was on the Transatlantic Call-In show, is that there are Republicans who aren't overt fascists. I do truly believe that. I truly believe there are some Republicans who are not overt fascists. And I think that those people, the primary argument that you're going to get them on, like the primary way that you're going to get them to agree with you is by saying people do not want to open up businesses in our great state of Florida anymore. People do not want to move here and invest in our children, and like people don't want to live here and pay property taxes for our schools, it does make a difference. Like when the times that I have seen Republicans taking the side of trans people, it usually involves that type of argument. Like it generally involves that kind of argument where they're saying, yeah, well, like you might feel a certain way about this, but people don't want to open up businesses and like, you know, the decision is bad for our economy and everything. The military angle seems like it would be fairly effective. Bo of the Fifth Column often points out how this disincentivizes military base expansion and harms military readiness, a thing which the Republicans claim to believe in. Right. I was watching some coverage from Alabama where there was some anti-trans bill being covered in Alabama, and a local reporter who I saw reporting on Twitter, I followed her, and she was posting about how a person was there speaking about how, you know, Space Force, like the United States Space Force, has been considering opening a new, or maybe even moving their operations into Alabama. And she was saying, my job is to consult with the US government about where to move Space Force. And you should know that this issue, like these bills that you're discussing today, these anti-trans bills, are going to influence my decision of whether I tell the US government whether they should open a new branch of the Space Force in Alabama. And yeah, there's like military money, you know, military spouses moving in, and like then their families live there and property values go up and they pay more taxes and they're buying stuff and it's good for the economy. I know, I love how the only thing that will make these fucking morons care about our rights is if it hurts their economy. Their precious little economy. We're not even done, y'all. We're not even done with the specific flavor of fascism in Florida today. Oh, and do you remember when we talked recently about how there were those parents who brought their teenage trans kids into the Florida State House and let them protest there, and then the people in charge there kind of just shut the doors to the gallery and detained their children without just cause and like basically temporarily kidnapped a bunch of trans teenagers. And meanwhile, they had been working on passing a law that would allow the state to take custody of children who may be subject to gender affirming procedures, basically, that their parents are transing them. And that actually passed, I believe. He signed it this week. The measure will also give Florida courts temporary jurisdiction over a child that has, quote, been subjected to or is threatened with being subjected to sex reassignment prescriptions or procedures. The new law will allow the state to take custody of a child if they have been subjected to hormone blockers, which, this includes hormone blockers and hormone replacement therapy. Florida courts could modify custody agreements from a different state if the minor is likely to receive gender-affirming care in that second state. So hypothetically, in this instance, an unaffirming parent could kidnap their trans child who is receiving affirming care in a state where it's legal. They could kidnap that child and bring them to Florida, and then Florida could rewrite the custody agreement and say, nope, this kid now belongs to this parent who kidnapped them. And since they like are living in the state of Florida now, I guess, like we're just going to go ahead and modify those custody agreements if the minor is likely to receive gender-affirming care in that second state. The text refers to gender-affirming care as sex reassignment prescriptions or procedures, qualifies this care as a form of, quote, physical harm. Medical facilities would have to give the State Department of Health a signed attestation that they neither provide gender-affirming care to any patients under 18 nor refer people to providers that do, and their medical license renewal is contingent upon signing this attestation. Oh yeah, anyone who violates the law could be charged with a misdemeanor on regards to like only nurse practitioners no longer being allowed to prescribe even to adults. Minors who've already begun transitioning will be allowed to continue to do so, but they are no longer allowed to receive care via telehealth, including for prescriptions. Their doctors are required to tell them about the, quote, risks of gender-affirming care, and patients will have to sign an informed consent form, which the ACLU has pointed out often contains misinformation, and doctors who violate any of these new rules could be charged with a felony. So it's very much like the whole abortion thing. There were at times, and there probably still are in some places, like requirements that they lie to you. Doctors being required to say, well, if you get an abortion, you might have an increased risk of getting breast cancer later on. And like, that's not true. That's just like, I think that maybe pregnancy can increase your risk of breast cancer because you have like an increase of estrogen in your body temporarily, but that's not the same as saying that getting an abortion will increase your chance of cancer later on. So like they're just, requiring them to lie in order to be able to continue dispensing the care. So I guess it's good that there is something of a grandfather clause, but if one of the parents disagrees, if like the parents get divorced or something and one of the parents disagrees, they can just take the kid and take custody of the kid, then deny them medical care, and then they're no longer grandfathered in anymore. And that's it. That's all it would take. And just a little cherry on top of the Florida Sundae that we're making, you know, we've gone as in depth as I think I am able to do today on all these different bills, because I have covered all of this in some degree previously, whether it's made it fully onto the channel or not. Hi, YouTube. In the future. What is it like in the future? Is it even worse? Is it even worse there now than it was back here, back then, which is now? Cherry on top. This is from the Orlando Police Department though, so I guess it's likely to be true. There was a digital traffic sign in Orlando displaying an anti-gay hate message. It says "kill all gays." Like, that's clear as day. That's clear as day. Yeah, it's worse. I came back in time to tell you. Geez, thanks, mama. The police department is investigating an anti-gay hate message that was displayed on a digital traffic sign early Wednesday morning near Lake Nona. The sign altered to say "kill all gays" just before 4 a.m. It appeared to be tampered with, and there is an active investigation. So it's, I guess, unclear whether... they're trying to say it was not some kind of actual traffic controller who changed this. They're saying some goon, some silly bean came and fucked with the programming and edited it, and they hacked it. It was tampered with, I say. So unclear as to where that came from. But yeah, there's just a sign on the side of, look at this, it's like a decently lit intersection in a pretty nice neighborhood. Like, this sign right here in front of it, this looks like it's near a gated community or something. Like, that's kind of the impression that I'm getting. And there's like clean lines on the road. That looks like an affluent neighborhood. So yeah, just kill all gays right there. All of the laws are like working toward that effect. Like, let's be totally clear that the underlying motive behind restricting a bunch of access to medical care for trans people is that they want us to die. And so yeah, it just, every once in a while, you get a nice little nugget of like, oh, they took the mask off. They said they hate the gays. If it had said "kill all Nazis," they would be outraged. Absolutely, right? Yeah. At a certain point, it's like, what do you say? Like, what can you possibly say about this? Except, like, if you're queer, you need to be in a militia now. Like, I really don't love that this is where I land on this. And I'm like, oh my God, I wish that there was a local John Brown gun club near where I live. There's not. And I really wish that there was, because I don't know what else to do except to be organized and say like, hey, you know, if you're going to come after us, we will defend ourselves. I've heard those are really easy to mess with. Apparently they have some kind of keyboard on them and you just need a password, and the password is often like 1234 or password. Yeah, I did not think that they were difficult to hack into. Like, hacker mode, just glasses come down. I'm in. They don't seem like they'd be hard to mess with. But yeah, I mean, is that not technically vandalism? Tampering with government property? Because I don't think that, well, I guess those might belong to the individual contractors, so it's tampering with private property. It's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank, bro. So, I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again, get the hell out of Florida if you still live in Florida. Like, oh my, like yesterday, you need to be out of Florida. Break your lease, sell all your stuff, give away your cat. I don't know, man. Like, you gotta get the fuck out of there. Happy Pride from myself and my patrons, especially want to shout out Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvog, Amanda B., Danielle McDonald, Sarah A., Spooky Heather Sylvia, Robin Olson, Michelle Winter, Athiette, Wellington Marcus, Jamie Jam, Desi Quiche, Suzanne Maynard, Nova, Kevin Young, Sojo, Elizabeth Bartell, and Mr. Atheist.